Hi, this is Jim Cranston from 7 Every Minute and 7everyminute.com, the podcast and website about reimagining your life. Thanks for joining me today to talk about, well, being honest with yourself. So let's get started. If you like what you hear today, please press that, leave a like button, and tell your friends and send me a message. So recently talked about life's priorities and about being the leader, followed by remembering how to prioritize your core beliefs and then how to live your life with inspiration and motivation. So we'll continue with this theme, but this week we'll be talking about being honest with yourself. Remember, all our work thus far has been based upon recognizing and honoring our core beliefs, using them to help set our goals, and then envisioning our future that we really want and working towards that vision. But all that is predicated upon being honest about what our core beliefs and goals and vision really are. Because let's face it, a lot of times we aren't entirely honest with ourselves. It's not that we just, can't trust ourselves to be honest with ourselves at all. But I think a lot of the times we tend to focus on the steps or the kind of the symptoms or the artifacts, as they're called, and not the real goal itself. I mean, for example, that I went through years ago, do you want to stop smoking or do you want to be healthier and live a fuller and more active life as long as you can? When I was focusing on the first piece, it was very difficult to make any progress because it was just something that had to be done. When I reframed it and kind of, well, this is just one piece of many things I'm doing to try and live a healthier life, suddenly the task wasn't near as daunting because all those other things were adding up and moving me towards my goal little by little. Similarly, do you want to just travel the world? Or do you want to meet and interact with many different cultures to both learn and share experiences and break down barriers? Similarly, do you want to learn some new skill? Or do you really want to stay socially active and be around other people with a common interest? Do you see the pattern here? The first goal isn't really the goal, it's just a step towards attaining your real goal. But the difference is that when you focus on the real goal, then that step, even if it's a difficult step like breaking a bad habit, it's just one step of many that you're taking. And together they give you a real momentum to keep moving through the difficult times. Many times I tell myself, I don't feel like working out this morning. And I really don't, But then I ask myself, do I feel like losing even more muscle from working at a desk job now? And of course, the answer is no. So I get up and I do my regular routine. This isn't negative innovation, not at all. But what it does is it takes the emphasis away from the difficult task and instead places it on the real goal. That true goal, that's the one I'm really interested in working towards. And so that makes it much easier to start and finish my morning workout routine or some task I have to do or whatever it is that might be difficult taken by itself. But when you realize it's just one little piece of a big goal, then it becomes actually, in a lot of cases, kind of trivial. But there's another self lie that, we sometimes get ourselves trapped by. And this is the lie of excusing our behavior by, being a little bit too easily, let's say. Like with the exercise routine example, if every day I come up with an excuse why I don't have to work out each day, then I really should be asking myself if I have set the correct personal goals for myself. Sometimes we let other people or society set our goals. And if they aren't genuinely important to us, we may tend to make excuses to others why we haven't really been working towards those goals. The problem with that is we're training our mind that it's okay to lie to ourselves, and that just isn't a good way to live, because then when something really is important to us, our brain is going to back up to old habits and say, well, let's just keep making excuses why we can skip working on it today. It's far better to, confront that disconnect, face it head on, and either change the goal or change our attitude. It may just mean telling your friends that reading a new book each week just really isn't personally important to you. You respect their determination, but you have other goals. Or whatever it is that's causing us to avoid working towards what we've told ourselves should be important to us. And that's a really important distinction. And especially when somebody else says it should be important to us, if it's not really important to us, no matter how many other people saying it, it's not going to be important to us. Because when we learn to be committed to our real goals and honest to our own self-evaluation, that'll lead us to more commitment to following through on our goals and less time spent trying to work on things that don't really matter to us. So to recap, if you think or you're trapped in a cycle of lying to yourself or just kind of making little white lies, as it were, there are two good areas to examine if one or both of those are the root cause. The first and a very common reason is to confuse the steps towards a goal with the goal itself, especially if the goal is to stop some bad habit. Actually, I should say if the step is to stop some bad habit, super especially if it's one that you enjoy. For me personally, like sugar, I love it. Probably the first 20 years of my adult life, I pretty much survived on it. But, it's a lot more effective to focus on the real goal, in my case, better health through more nutritious eating, than that difficult intermediate step. And when I do that, it's much easier to get over those difficult times. That doesn't mean you shouldn't celebrate completing that step. As we know, every time you make a goal and attain it, that's cause for celebration. It's really important. But that's because it's an important milestone. But your focus is on a much bigger picture. So that one difficult step or that one little bump in the road is just the cost of reaching a much larger and more important goal. So use that momentum of your other successes, moving you towards that same goal to help you keep going to the difficult steps. The next common reason we just covered is you might be lying to ourselves and making excuses because our goal really is someone else's goal. That's pretty easy to get trapped into, whether it's with a group of friends, a significant other, a social group, fads, whatever it is. A real telltale sign of this is, it may be the case that every time you even think of the situation where this might come up as a discussion topic, say, you immediately start to think of ways you can either avoid the situation or start thinking of excuses why you didn't do what you said you were going to do. If you see that as a warning sign, right, it's time to really start evaluating it and just come clean with your friends. Say, we all said we were going to do this and it seemed like it'd be fun, but I found out that it just really isn't that important to me. So anything I can do to help you, that's great, but it's not really relevant to me. If you're honest and look for other areas of common interest with your friends, say, or in the extreme, different people to hang out with, ultimately you'll find you'll put more energy into things that matter to you and less energy trying to avoid things that don't. But it's very important to be honest with yourself and everyone else and not develop that habit of kind of fibbing to yourself or making excuses all the time when it comes to your core beliefs. So that's mostly it for the evening. Actually, I was trying to decide, I was almost going to talk about some other things too, and I'll cover those really quickly. Totally different topic. And just some things that came up. I went to podcast movement was last week. I go to that every year, and I usually do an episode on it. And I may do one this year. But it was kind of interesting because, again, like last year, I'd forgotten I bought a ticket. And also I get a little notice in my email saying, hey, Jim, don't forget to bring your email because you need the barcode to sign in. I thought, phooey, I brought that ticket. When is it? Tomorrow. Oh, no. So I'm thinking about it and thought, did it last year, I'll do it this year. And so did a day trip to Denver from New York State. And our transportation system, people complain about it all the time. It is unbelievable. Tuesday afternoon, I found a nonstop flight from New York City to Denver. I left here 6:00. I was at the show a little before 9, checked in, was on the show floor meeting people. Actually walked in and immediately met somebody really interesting. I'll talk about those people. Talked to them for about 45 minutes and just went from there. Had an awesome day, met a bunch of great people. Actually found a restaurant that had real gluten-free food in the hotel complex. That was awesome. And ended the day, went back to the airport, took the 11:59 p.m. flight back home, and was back here for the day job by 8:00 in the morning. Just incredible, the things we have at our disposal here in the U.S. And before anybody says, well, that'd be nice if I had that sort of money, just word to the wise, when you put things off to the absolute last second, flights go way cheaper and you don't have to pay for a hotel. So actually, it's an extremely cheap way to go to a trade show. Just like I say, if you ever find yourself in this situation, it turns out you can do it a lot less expensively than booking tickets in advance, going there and staying overnight a couple nights. To put it in perspective, the hotel where the trade show is at, each room for one night costs more than my flight. So last minute flights are the way to go. But it was good because there was a lot of inspiration. My day job, I've talked about it on and off. In reality, there are a lot of good things about it. And that's something I think we should all kind of keep in perspective, that when we're with something all the time, we get used to the good things and kind of forget to celebrate them and really notice the bad things, and they become the primary aspect of it. In reality, are the bad things about the job? Of course it is. It's on Earth. It's a real thing. Not everything's perfect. But there are a lot of good things too, like my ability to give them a day's notice to take a day off to go to a show. And it is work and there is stress, but you got to remember, I talked about this before. I was talking about the book, The Upside of Stress, I think it is. And stress is a natural reaction. People say, oh, there's too much stress in my life. That happens when you don't address the stress. Stress is a combination of physiological event in your life that causes you to get energized and to really focus on something. And so I realized something interesting happens when you work in a place that's stressful. And it's stressful because we do a lot of work. Um, it's not stressful for bad reasons necessarily. There's just a lot of stuff going on. And it's not a bad stress, but there's always stress. There's always things to be done. There's always something for your attention. And so that causes you to focus on them. And I realized, which is really kind of interesting, that when you get in that situation and because there's always more things to focus on, there's always more stress, so there's more things to focus on, you forget then to be mindful of all the other things in your life. Because you get so busy solving those little emergencies, you forget about the whole reason you're here. You forget to look at everything else. That's part of the reason I went to the show, because I thought, there's a lot of stuff I could do. It was Wednesday. I had a lot of stuff I could do Wednesday. And I thought, or I could do the Wednesday stuff Thursday and completely change my focus to something that's aligned with a different goal, which is what I did. And so it was a real life lesson. I got a lot more from going than just going to the show and meeting a bunch of great people, which I did. It was also a reminder for all of us, I think, that when you find yourself living from stressful situation to stressful situation, sometimes it's worth taking a step back and kind of remembering where that stress is coming from and how much of that stress is elective. Because in my case, the day job is a piece of my life, obviously, but to think about it day and night is a choice that I'm making. And it was also a choice to say, okay, tomorrow I'm not going to think about it. I'm going to think on something else that's very important to me. And so we talked about this a couple of days ago in keeping priorities and not forgetting your core beliefs, or a couple of weeks ago, sorry, in keeping your core beliefs. And I had forgotten that could actually, the same principles occur insofar as external influences, whether it's you're caring for somebody else, very important task, but you still have to remember to care for yourself. Or in this case, working at a job that has a lot of things going on, very important. They pay me to show up, and so that's why I go. But it's also important to remember the other aspects of life. And so it was kind of interesting, and wish I could read my notes, but my glasses don't work that way. Oh yeah, and so today was an interesting day too. So that was it. I'll talk more about podcast movement another time, but it was really neat to just reset my life for a day, go out into a different environment, and remember, totally re-energize me, why I'm doing this, and to be in touch with other people who are doing the same thing and people who are really putting themselves out there. There was an awesome launch case study from James Wedmore I just read today, and I've mentioned him before. He's one of my mentors and coaches. And there's another person in this current cohort, and she went out and just did a launch, and 1,000 things went wrong. And to make a long story short, it was successful beyond her expectations. And when I was at the show, I met a lot of people who in that same mindset. It's kind of like, yeah, it's not going to be perfect, but we're just going to do it, and we're going to succeed to the degree that we can succeed. And when you're around people like that, it's very energizing. My day job is a large corporation, and there's nothing wrong with large corporations. There's good points and bad points to them. But one of the things that is definitely a bad point is in most of them is people get used to focusing on the problems, which is good. I mean, you want to identify the problems and solve them, but they forget to celebrate all the good things. And so they don't do it on purpose. And in this particular case, they're making efforts to try and be more encouraging. But the underlying effect of that is it seems like there's always more problems, when in reality, I was just questioned today, what do you think the status of the project was? And I told them, I said, actually, I think it's in pretty good shape. They go, really? We have this wrong and that wrong. I said, yes, but we've overcome probably hundreds of issues by this point. It's moving ahead, and it's actually looking far better than I ever expected that it would. I said, I think we're in great shape. And it's because I made a point a couple months ago of stop looking at the problems and look at the overall progress that's been made. And I'd encourage you to do the same when you see something that just seems it's been endlessly, overwhelmingly negative, to say, wait a second, am I just focusing on the negative, or am I focusing on the overall? And try and step back, look at the overall progress, because it's very easy to miss that because it happens in little increments, but problems are always big things that pop up, so they get your attention. And so the problems are important, but say, wow, 30 weeks ago when something happened, I had no idea how I was ever going to make it through the next day. And here it is 30 weeks later, and we've addressed almost all the issues. So even though there's a whole series of problems that happened that you solved, you got to remember that you did solve them and you moved ahead for it. So just a little side piece. I wanted to talk about it while it's still fresh in my mind, those two things. The whole thing about podcast movement, inspiration, and what it brought out in me, helped me focus on, is that it's easy to get trapped, just like we talked about lying to yourself, because you get trapped into somebody else's priorities and goals. It's also easy to get trapped into your own looking at the wrong thing in your life. The goal is really what your real goal and vision is. Things like solving the problems at the day job, solving the problems in your life, those are all steps. It actually plays into this more than I had realized when I started talking about it. It's exactly the same thing. These are all little pieces, all little obstacles you have to overcome to get to the big goal. And so you want to remember, focus on the big goal. The big goal is what you've envisioned. Things like setbacks at work, setbacks in your life. Those are just little things to overcome. And they may be big things to overcome. Don't misunderstand me. But they still are things to overcome on the way to your huge thing, which is your goal and your vision. So that's really it for the evening now, for real. And thank you so very much for joining me tonight. Always. Your homework, always optional. Think of one goal you have that really isn't all that important to you. And then extra points, if you also think about how it got into your life. Was it something someone else said, oh, everybody's doing this, or did your significant other suggest it or request it? Now, how are you going to resolve getting it back out of your life? Basically, how to make your life prioritized upon your goals and accommodate other people in your life, obviously. But remember, even in that case, the goal isn't necessarily the goal they suggest, but making them happy. Very different goal, very different set of steps to get there. So that's it for the evening. As always, remember, where is it? UKR7.com, list of links to support the people of Ukraine. And also World Central Kitchen is there. Talk about it every week. Still super important. Even more important now than ever, I would say, for a variety of reasons. But if you can, you're able, donate either to the people of Ukraine or donate to some cause you find important. We talk about it fairly often, that really thinking outside yourself, one of the best ways to help yourself is to help others, because it takes the focus out of looking inward to looking outward and really opens up your eyes to the world and to other people. So if you want to, UKR7.com, World Central Kitchen, WCK.org. Put it up real quick for anyone who's looking, WCK.org. Lots and lots of other places where you can make donations to help people, or just help somebody personally, or just help them even if you don't have the funds or don't feel like donating money right now. Just whatever you can do. You see somebody who looks sad, you don't have to make a big thing about it. Just walk by and say, hey, how you doing? And just smile to them. Just that can change somebody's day around. Again, look outside yourself and try and help other people. I think you'll really feel a lot better about life if you do that. So that's it for the evening. As always, thank you for stopping by. If you found something interesting, useful, please pass it along. Please hit that like button. If not, please drop me a comment as to what you'd like to hear. Have a great week. Remember to live the life that you dreamed of, because that's the path to true contentment. Love and encouragement to everyone. See you next week on 7 Every Minute and 7everyminute.com. Thank you.